Lesson 39 useEffectEvent. 1. Introduction. Good morning, afternoon everyone. Today we're going to explore an advanced hook in React, useEffectEvent. This hook is designed to help us move non-reactive logic out of our effects and into a reusable form, enabling cleaner and more predictable component behavior. 2. What is useEffectEvent? At its core, useEffectEvent allows us to wrap logic that we might otherwise include inside a use effect, or similar, and treat it as a separate effect event. This event function can be invoked inside an effect, but the important part is that the logic inside this event can always read the latest props and state when invoked. In other words, you extract part of the logic into this reusable event function, and then you call that event from within your effect. 3. Why use it? There are two primary concerns it addresses. First, stale closures. Ordinarily, when you create a callback in a component and capture some props or state, by the time the callback runs, it might hold on to outdated values. Using an effect event gives you access to the most recent values. Second, control over dependencies. Usually, if you access props or state inside an effect, you must list them as dependencies so that the effect reruns when they change. But sometimes you want to read a value only at the moment when something else happens, without the effect itself rerunning when the value changes. useEffectEvent provides a pattern for that. 4. How it works conceptually. You declare an effect event at the top level of your component. Think of it as defining a function whose body can access the current props and state when it's invoked. Then you use that function inside an effect. The effect responds to what you want it to respond to, for example, some prop changing, and inside the effect you call your effect event to do the internal logic that may need the latest state or props, but should not trigger the effect itself to rerun when the latest state changes. 5. Typical use case. Reading the latest props, state without refiring the effect. One scenario, you have an effect that should run when a particular prop changes. Inside that effect you want to perform some logic that uses other state values, but you do not want the effect to rerun just because those other state values changed. Normally, you would have to include those other state values in the dependency list. With the effect event pattern, you wrap the logic that uses those state values in a function, the effect event. When the effect triggers, you pass in the reactive value, the prop you're watching, as an argument to the effect event, and inside the event you access the other state values. The effect only triggers when the prop changes. The inner logic still sees the latest state when it runs, without forcing the effect to run when that state changes. 6. Rules and caveats. It's important to keep in mind some rules. The effect event should be declared just before the effect that uses it. You should call the effect event only inside the effect, or inside other similar hooks like useLayoutEffect or useInsertionEffect, and you should not pass the event to other components or use it outside its intended context. This ensures clarity around where the logic runs. This hook is not a shortcut for avoiding dependencies. You should not use useEffectEvent as a way to skip putting dependencies in your effect. That would cover up bugs or lead to subtle mistakes. And finally, useEffectEvent is intended to extract non-reactive logic that you don't want to trigger re-execution whenever its captured values change. It is not a general replacement for all effect logic. 7. Thinking through pros and trade-offs. Using this pattern gives you a clearer separation of concerns. The effect handles when something happens, and the effect event handles what to do when it happens. This clarity can help readability and maintainability. However, you must resist the temptation to overuse it. If you have logic that truly depends on changing props or state in a way that you want the effect to rerun, then you still should model that with dependencies. Misusing effect events can lead to code that feels magical or is harder to debug because the connections between state changes and effect runs become less explicit. 8. Summary. useEffectEvent is a tool in the React toolkit that lets you extract logic from an effect, giving that logic access to the latest props and state when invoked, while keeping the effect's re-execution criteria clear and controlled. When used thoughtfully, it can make your component logic cleaner and more predictable. But like any advanced tool, it comes with rules and demands discipline. 9. Closing and next steps. To wrap up, I encourage you to take a moment after this session to review your own components and ask, are there places where I'm capturing state inside an effect, but it doesn't need to trigger the effect when that state changes? Could this pattern improve clarity there? In our next session, we will look at a detailed walkthrough of how the pattern is applied, the pitfalls to watch out for, and best practices around structuring effect events in larger components.